I was standing in the elevator at NextCore Financial when I heard it. Derek, our CTO, talking to Jake, the CEO's son. Derek's voice was casual, almost cheerful. Fire her department for that Lambo the second they finish the new code. My blood turned to ice. 3 years I'd spent building their payment processing system. My team of 5 developers had poured everything into it. Launch was in 2 weeks. But they didn't know I'd already been designing something better at night. Something they'd never see coming. That evening I sat alone in my small apartment in Austin, Texas. My hands were shaking as I pulled out the employment contract I'd signed 4 years ago when I joined NextCore as employee number 12. The company had grown so much since then. We had 87 employees now. I'd been there from almost the beginning, watching Marcus Feldman, our CEO, build his dream. But apparently his dream didn't include me anymore. I flipped through the pages, searching for anything that could help. The standard clauses were all there. Non-compete, non-disclosure intellectual property rights. Then I found it. Buried in the technical consulting addendum I'd negotiated back when the company was just starting. A single paragraph that changed everything. If terminated within 30 days of a major system deployment, all licensing fees revert to independent contractor rates of $49,000 per hour per developer for maintenance and support. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. My team had 5 developers total. I grabbed my calculator and did the math. $245,000 per hour if they fired all of us. My heart was racing. This clause had been my insurance policy 4 years ago when NextCore was just a startup and I was taking a risk joining them. Marcus had agreed to it without much thought, because back then the company was too small for it to matter. But now, with our system processing millions of dollars in transactions, this little clause was a nuclear weapon. I thought about my team. Emma, 26 years old, our front-end specialist, and a single mom to a 2-year-old daughter. She needed this job desperately. Travis, 31, our back-end architect, who'd just gotten married 3 months ago. Hannah, 28, our security expert still drowning in student loan debt. And Greg, 42, our database engineer who was supporting his elderly parents. They all trusted me. They all depended on these jobs. And Marcus was going to throw them away for a Lamborghini. The anger started to replace the fear. For 6 months I'd been working on something in secret. I called it Phoenix Pay, a payment processing system built entirely on my own time using my own equipment, my own money. I'd started it as a backup plan when I first sensed something was wrong at NextCore, when Derek started taking credit for our work in meetings, when Marcus stopped acknowledging our contributions, when Jake, who'd never written a line of code in his life, started getting involved in technical decisions. Phoenix Pay was faster than NextCore's system, more secure, better architecture, and it was mine. I opened my laptop and looked at the code. It was good, really good. But it wasn't quite finished. I had maybe 70% of the functionality complete. I'd need another few weeks to make it production ready. But now I didn't have weeks. I had days. Monday morning arrived too soon. I got to the office at 7:30, my usual time. The parking garage was mostly empty. I was walking toward the elevator when I heard voices echoing off the concrete walls. Derek and Jake again. I ducked behind a concrete pillar and listened. Derek was saying something about the investors. The investors don't care about the dev team. They care about the tech. Once we own it, we can offshore maintenance for pennies. Jake laughed. Dad's already picked out the Lamborghini Aventador. Silver. He's been talking about it for months. I felt sick. My stomach churned with anger and disgust. We were just line items to them, expenses to be eliminated. Our years of work, our expertise, our dedication meant nothing. I waited until they left, then took the stairs to the 3rd floor. I needed to think. I needed a plan. First, I had to protect myself legally. I scheduled a meeting with Sharon in HR saying I wanted to review my employment contract. She seemed nervous when I asked, her eyes darting away from mine. "Everything's standard," she said. "Why are you asking?" "Just reviewing my options," I told her, keeping my voice casual. "Thinking about my future here." She made a note on her computer. I could see her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. She knew. HR already knew about the plan to fire us. That afternoon, everything changed. Marcus called an emergency all-hands meeting. The entire company crammed into the main conference room. Marcus stood at the front, his face bright with forced enthusiasm. "Great news, everyone. We're moving the launch up this Friday instead of next Friday." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The investors want to see it live before they sign the Series B funding," Marcus continued. "I know it's tight, but I have complete faith in Carol's team." He gestured toward me and my team. Everyone clapped, but my mind was racing, calculating, panicking. They were accelerating. The system launch would trigger the 30-day countdown in my contract. If they fired us on Friday right after the launch, they'd be within the 30-day window. But if they waited until the original launch date next Friday, we'd be outside the window. They were moving it up to avoid my contract protection. I had 4 days instead of 2 weeks. 4 days to figure out how to save my team and myself. I kept my face neutral, applauding along with everyone else. But inside I was screaming. That night I didn't sleep. I worked on Phoenix Pay until 3 a.m, pushing it closer to completion. I created documentation. I prepared deployment scripts. I got it to a state where I could demonstrate it if I needed to, because I had a terrible feeling I was going to need it very soon. Tuesday morning hit me like a truck. I'd gotten maybe 2 hours of sleep. My eyes were burning as I walked into the office at 7. But the moment I stepped onto our floor, I knew something was wrong. My team was gathered around Travis's desk, their faces pale with stress. "What's going on?" I asked. Travis looked up at me, his expression grim. "Someone changed the core code overnight, without authorization. The system has critical bugs now." He showed me his screen. Lines of code that had been working perfectly yesterday were now broken. Not just broken, sabotaged. Hannah was already checking the repository logs. The changes came from Derek's admin account. At 2 a.m, I felt a cold rage settle over me. They were sabotaging our own system, creating problems so they could blame us, justify firing us for poor performance. "We need to fix this," I said quietly, "now, before anyone notices." But I was already making copies of everything. The broken code, the logs showing Derek's account making the changes, the timestamps. Every piece of evidence that proved this was deliberate sabotage. I stored it all on encrypted drives that I kept in my bag. My team worked frantically all morning undoing Derek's damage. By noon we had the system stable again, but we were exhausted and rattled. That afternoon a man in an expensive suit arrived at the office. Marcus introduced him to the company. "Everyone, this is Bradley Ashton. He's here to help us with some contract reviews before the launch." Bradley was a lawyer. I could tell from the way he carried himself, the way he looked at people like they were potential liabilities. An hour later, I was called into a conference room. Bradley was there sitting across from me with a leather portfolio and a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Carol, thank you for meeting with me. I just have a few questions about your work here." He asked about my code, whether I'd created anything using personal equipment, whether I had any side projects, whether I understood the intellectual property clauses in my contract. I answered carefully, honestly but carefully. Yes, I had a side project, Phoenix Pay, built entirely on my own time, my own equipment addressing different problems than NextCore's system. Bradley took notes. He seemed satisfied, but gave me a warning before I left. "Just remember, Carol, NextCore owns anything related to payment processing you create while employed here." The threat was clear. That evening I met with Rachel Porter, a friend from college who'd become a lawyer. We sat in a coffee shop on 6th Street, and I showed her everything: my contract, the sabotage evidence, my concerns about Phoenix Pay. Rachel read through it, all her expression growing more serious with each page. "You're right about the fee reversion clause," she said finally. "It's ironclad. If they fire you within 30 days of deployment, they owe you these rates." "But what about Phoenix Pay?" I asked. "Can they claim it?" Rachel frowned. "They're going to try. You need to establish it's completely separate. Get them to acknowledge in writing that your work is complete and satisfactory before Friday. That way, if they claim Phoenix Pay later, you have proof they were satisfied with your NextCore work." Wednesday morning, I sent an email to Marcus, Derek, and Jake. The subject line read, "System status, ready for Friday launch." I detailed every completed component, every tested feature, every metric we'd achieved. And I ended with a request: "Please confirm my team has fulfilled all contractual obligations." I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. Finally, Derek responded. Marcus and Jake were copied. "System is not ready. Multiple performance issues. Your team needs to work through Thursday night to fix your mistakes." He attached a list. 19 specific issues. I opened the attachment with dread. My team gathered around my screen as we read through it. Travis was the first to speak. "Half of these aren't even real problems. He's making things up." Hannah scrolled through the list. "And the other half are caused by his sabotage. The code he changed at 2 in the morning." I understood immediately. They were building a case for termination for cause. If they fired us for poor performance, for failing to deliver my contract, protections wouldn't apply. The fee reversion clause only worked if we were terminated without cause. They were boxing us in from every angle. Marcus sent a follow-up email 10 minutes later. "Carol, I'm disappointed. I expected better. Fix these by Thursday at 5 p.m. or we'll have to discuss your team's future." Emma read the email over my shoulder. Her voice cracked. "I can't lose this job, Carol. I have a daughter. Daycare costs $800 a month. I'm barely making it as it is." I turned to look at my team. They were scared. They were looking to me for answers. "Trust me," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "I'm not going to let them do this to us." But inside I was terrified. That night we worked late. All of us. We documented everything. Every fake issue on Derek's list. Every piece of sabotaged code. We created a technical report with screenshots, logs, timestamps. Proof that the problems were manufactured. I also spent 3 hours finishing Phoenix Pay. The core functionality was complete now. It could process payments, handle security, manage transactions. It wasn't polished, but it worked. I had no idea if I'd need it, but I was ready. Thursday morning felt like walking into a war zone. I arrived at 8 to find my entire team locked out of the system. All our admin access had been revoked. I marched straight to Derek's office. "What's going on? Why can't we access our own system?" Derek didn't even look up from his computer. "Security protocol. During final testing phase. Can't have too many people making changes." "That's not protocol," I said. "That's sabotage. How are we supposed to fix the issues you listed if we can't access the code?" He finally looked at me. His smile was cold. "You should have thought of that before you let the quality slip." I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked back to my team and told them what happened. We were frozen out, unable to defend ourselves, unable to prove the issues were fake because we couldn't even access the system to demonstrate it. At 10, I was called into Marcus's office. This was it. I could feel it. Derek was there. Jake was there. And Bradley, the lawyer, was on speakerphone. Marcus didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Carol, we've reviewed your team's performance. It's unacceptable." He slid a document across his desk. A termination letter. Already drafted, with my name on it. "We're letting your entire department go," Marcus said. "Effective immediately after tomorrow's demo. For cause. Failure to meet performance standards." I forced myself to stay calm. "I'd like to review the specific performance failures." Derek jumped in, his voice eager. "The system is buggy, slow, and unreliable, all documented." I pulled out my own folder, the one I'd prepared last night, documented by you, Derek, including code changes you made yourself at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. I laid out the evidence. The logs showing his admin account accessing the repository, the exact timestamps, the before and after comparisons of the code. Marcus barely glanced at it. "Those logs could be fabricated. You had admin access too." My heart sank. They didn't care about the truth. Bradley's voice came through the speakerphone. "Miss Carroll, if you make accusations of sabotage, we'll countersue for defamation and breach of contract." Then Jake spoke, and his words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Plus, we found out about your little side project. Phoenix Pay Right." The room seemed to tilt. How did they know? Jake was enjoying this. "You used the company Wi-Fi to upload files last month. We monitor everything." I had. One night, working late at the office, I'd uploaded some Phoenix Pay documentation to my personal cloud storage. I'd been tired, not thinking clearly. One mistake. One tiny mistake. "That's company property," Jake continued. "Intellectual theft." Bradley's voice was smooth, practiced. "We're prepared to pursue criminal charges if you don't sign a release waiving all claims." A new document slid across the desk. I scanned it quickly. It waived the fee reversion clause, released all IP claims to Phoenix Pay, included a comprehensive NDA. Everything I had they were taking. Marcus leaned forward. "Sign this, or we destroy you. We have deeper pockets and better lawyers. You'll spend the next 5 years in court and lose everything." I felt the walls closing in. They had me. One Wi-Fi upload. That was all they needed to claim ownership of Phoenix Pay. Even if their claim was weak, fighting it would bankrupt me. My team would still be fired for cause. The contract protection wouldn't help. I'd get nothing. "Can I have time to review this with my lawyer?" I asked. Marcus checked his watch. "You have until 8 a.m. tomorrow. Sign it, or we file charges and sue." I left his office feeling like I'd been beaten. I called Rachel immediately. We met at the same coffee shop on 6th Street. She read the waiver document, her expression growing darker with each page. "This is brutal, Carol. You'd be giving up everything, but fighting them could take years and cost hundreds of thousands. Even if you win, you'd be destroyed financially. I sat there staring at the document. Everything I'd built, everything I'd planned, my team, our future, all of it collapsing. That evening I sat alone in my apartment. The waiver was on my coffee table taunting me. I cried. Actually cried. Something I hadn't done in years. 3 years of my life poured into NextCore, my team depending on me. And I couldn't save them. I couldn't even save myself. I picked up the pen. I almost signed it. But then I stopped. Something was nagging at me. I pulled out my original contract and read the fee reversion clause again, word by word. Upon termination of employment within 30 days of major system deployment, all support and maintenance fees revert to independent contractor rates. It said termination, just termination. It didn't specify for cause or without cause. It just said termination. My hands started shaking. Rachel had assumed it only applied to wrongful termination, but the language didn't say that. It just said any termination within 30 days. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel. It was 9 at night, but she answered. Rachel, the clause doesn't specify cause. It just says termination. There was a pause. Oh my God, you're right. I missed that. If they fire us tomorrow, even for cause, the clause still triggers. Unless you sign the waiver, Rachel said slowly. That's why they're so desperate for you to sign it. They can't fire us without triggering the fees unless I sign away my rights first. Exactly. So I just don't sign. But then they'll prosecute you for IP theft, sue you, make your life hell. I know, but my team will get something. The fees will bankrupt NextCore, but my team will be able to claim their share. Carol, they'll destroy you personally. I know. I hung up and sat in the dark thinking. I had to make a choice. Sign the waiver and save myself but lose everything. Or refuse to sign and face prosecution, but at least my team would have a chance at the contract fees. It wasn't really a choice at all. I called Marcus at 9:15. He answered immediately. He'd been waiting. I've decided, I said. I won't sign your waiver. There was a long silence. Then we'll see you in court, Marcus said. And we're filing criminal charges. I know. But my team and I will be at the demo tomorrow. We built this system. We deserve to see it launch. Another pause. I could hear him breathing, calculating. If he canceled the demo, he lost the investors. If he barred us, it would look suspicious. Fine, he said finally. Be there at 8 a.m. But after the demo, you're all fired, and we're coming after you legally. I understand. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. I just forced them to fire me publicly after deployment. The fee clause would activate, but they were also going to prosecute me, possibly send me to prison for IP theft. I was gambling everything on a contract clause and a prayer. Friday morning came too fast. I woke up at 5, having barely slept. My stomach was in knots. I showered, dressed in my best business casual outfit, and drove to the office. It was 7 when I arrived. The main conference room had been transformed. Catered breakfast, professional presentation set up, 12 chairs arranged for the investors. Marcus was already there, working the room all smiles and confidence. Derek was running final system checks, looking stressed. Jake stood near the coffee station, scrolling through his phone, probably looking at Lamborghinis. My team arrived together at 7:30. Emma looked terrified. Travis kept checking his phone. Hannah was pale. Greg was the only one who seemed calm, but I knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders. We sat in the back row. A text buzzed on my phone. It was from Rachel. They filed the lawsuit 30 minutes ago. IP theft, breach of contract. This is serious, Carol. My hands started shaking. I put the phone away and tried to breathe normally. At 8 sharp, Marcus called the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Today you'll see the future of payment processing. He launched into his pitch. Our proprietary NextCore system handles transactions faster and more securely than anything on the market. We've invested 3 years of development into this platform, and I'm confident you'll see why it's worth your investment. Derek took over, walking through the technical demonstration. The system processed test transactions flawlessly. Response times were excellent. Security protocols worked perfectly. The investors were nodding impressed, taking notes. 20 minutes in, an investor named Thomas raised his hand. Who built this system? Marcus hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Our talented tech team, led by our CTO Derek. I stood up. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Actually, I built it. I'm Carol, lead developer. That's my team. I pointed to Emma, Travis, Hannah, and Greg. They stood as well. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Marcus forced a smile. Yes, Carol's team was involved in the development process. A female investor named Patricia spoke up. Involved or built? Built, I said clearly. Every line of code, every feature, every security protocol. Derek hasn't written production code in 6 years. Marcus's face was turning red. Carol, please sit down. This isn't the time or place. But another investor, a man named Richard, was frowning. What's the long-term support plan for this system? Derek jumped in. We have a robust maintenance structure in place. I spoke again, louder this time. Actually, I have information the investors deserve to know. As of this morning, NextCore filed a lawsuit against me for intellectual property theft. And immediately after this demonstration, they plan to fire my entire development team. Gasps around the room. Marcus looked like he was going to explode. That is completely inappropriate to discuss here. Is it? I pulled out my contract from my bag. You're firing the only people who understand this system. And according to my employment contract, which your lawyer Bradley Ashton helped draft, that triggers a fee reversion clause. $49,000 per hour per developer for any maintenance or support after termination within 30 days of deployment. I held up the contract. 5 developers. That's $245,000 per hour. Bradley, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. His face had gone completely white. He pulled out his laptop with shaking hands and started frantically typing. Marcus turned to him. What is she talking about? Bradley was reading, his lips moving silently. Then he looked up, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Oh God. Oh no. She's right. Patricia leaned forward. Is this true? You're firing your development team the day of launch, and there's a $250,000 hourly support fee. Thomas stood up. And you filed a lawsuit against your lead developer this morning. Marcus was stammering, trying to regain control. This is a misunderstanding. There's been a miscommunication. Jake couldn't help himself. This is extortion. No, I said calmly. It's the contract your father signed 4 years ago. Bradley, would you like to read the relevant clause aloud? Bradley looked like he might be sick, but he read from the contract on his screen. Upon termination of employment within 30 days of major system deployment, all support and maintenance fees revert to independent contractor rates of $49,000 per developer hour for maintenance and support services. Thomas looked at Marcus with disgust. So you're telling us this system, which requires ongoing maintenance, will cost $250,000 per hour to support if you fire these people? Derek tried to save it. We can hire new developers. Offshore teams are cheap. Hannah stood. The system has 800,000 lines of custom code. It would take a new team 6 months just to understand the architecture. Travis added, we built proprietary security protocols without documentation. Good luck reverse engineering it. Greg spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. And that's assuming we're willing to cooperate with knowledge transfer, which we're not required to do after termination. The investors were talking among themselves now, their voices rising. Patricia looked at Marcus with something like contempt. You're basically giving these employees a nuclear weapon and then firing them. What kind of business sense does that make? Marcus was losing it. You want to know why we're firing them? Because they're trying to steal our intellectual property. Carol built a competing system called Phoenix Pay. I stayed calm, even as every eye in the room turned to me, which I built on my own time, my own equipment, solving different problems. But since you're claiming ownership, I brought my own lawyer. Rachel Porter walked in from the hallway where she'd been waiting. Rachel Porter representing Miss Carol. NextCore's claim to Phoenix Pay is baseless. It was developed entirely independently. But even if we fight over that, the fee reversion clause for NextCore is ironclad and has nothing to do with Phoenix Pay. Bradley was still frantically reading. We filed suit this morning for IP theft. Rachel smiled. And by doing so before the termination, you've created a legal nightmare. You're suing a current employee, which opens you up to retaliation claims, hostile work environment claims, and constructive dismissal arguments. Then the alarm started blaring. Everyone jumped. The demo screen started showing error messages. Red warning boxes appeared. Transaction after transaction began failing. Derek rushed to his laptop. What the hell is happening? The payment processing system was crashing, live in front of all the investors. Transactions were being rejected. Error codes were cascading across the screen. Travis leaned over and whispered to me, "That's the sabotage code Derek put in Tuesday night. He set it on a timer to fail after the demo and blame us, but it triggered early." On the main screen, the system was completely failing now. Marcus was shouting at Derek, "Fix it! Fix it right now!" Derek's fingers were flying over his keyboard, but nothing was working. He didn't understand the code well enough. He'd been taking credit for our work for so long that he'd forgotten he couldn't actually do it himself. He looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Patricia spoke up. "Can your team fix this?" I sat calmly in my chair. "We could, if we were employees, but you just publicly announced plans to fire us." Marcus practically shouted, "I never said you were fired." "You filed a lawsuit against me this morning," I said. "That's constructive dismissal. You've created a hostile work environment and announced intent to terminate. So, technically, we're already independent contractors. Our rates are $49,000 per hour, each." The room was dead silent, except for the error alarms still blaring from the speakers. I looked at Marcus. "Unless you'd like to negotiate." The demo room was complete chaos. The system was still failing. Error messages were multiplying on the screen. The investors were on their feet, some making phone calls, others arguing with Marcus. Marcus pulled me aside, his face red and sweating. "Name your price, Carol. What do you want?" "I want proper employment contracts for my entire team," I said, "with equity, 2% each vesting over 4 years. And I want board oversight of the technical department. No more decisions made without developer input." Jake exploded from across the room. "You're insane. You're trying to steal the company." Thomas, the investor, cut him off. "Actually, Jake, that sounds remarkably reasonable given the situation. Marcus, if you don't secure these developers, this company is worthless. The system is failing right now, in front of us." Patricia nodded. "We're supposed to be investing $20 million. Into what? A broken system with no one who can fix it." Marcus looked cornered. "Fine. We'll draft new contracts." Bradley was gathering his laptop. "I'll prepare everything today." "No," I said firmly. "I want them now, or the system stays broken." Bradley's hands were shaking. "I need at least 2 hours to draft proper contracts." Rachel stepped forward. "Use a standard equity template. Plug in the numbers. 1 hour." The investors agreed. Marcus had no choice. He pulled Derek and Jake into his office. Through the glass wall, I could see them arguing. Jake was gesturing wildly. Derek looked defeated. Marcus was pointing fingers at both of them. While they were occupied, I nodded to my team. Travis pulled out his laptop and started typing. Within 20 minutes, they had the system back online. The errors cleared. Transactions started processing normally again. The investors noticed immediately. Thomas approached me. "Your team really does know what they're doing." Patricia joined us. "I've been investing in tech for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this situation. Between you and me, Marcus is an idiot, but he's also vindictive. Whatever agreement you reach today, he'll try to break it tomorrow. Watch your back." Her warning settled in my stomach like a stone. At 10, Bradley returned with contracts. His suit was rumpled. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in an hour. Rachel and I reviewed the documents together. They looked legitimate at first glance. 2% equity for each team member, standard 4-year vesting with a 1-year cliff. Board observer seat for the technical lead. Everything we'd asked for. But Rachel's fingers stopped on a section near the end. Section 14C. She read it quietly, then looked at me. "This gives NextCore the right to buy out your equity at any time for fair market value as determined by independent valuation. And they choose the valuator." I felt my hopes crashing. "So they can force us out for whatever price they decide." "Exactly. They're counting on you being desperate enough to sign anything." I looked around the room. The investors were waiting. My team was exhausted. Emma had dark circles under her eyes. This nightmare was destroying all of us. But if I signed this, we'd be right back where we started. Temporary employment with no real security. They'd force us out in a few months for pennies. If I didn't sign, we'd be fired and they'd fight the fee clause in court for years. Either way, Marcus won. I stood up. The room went quiet. "I'm not signing this." Marcus's expression shifted from hope to rage. "Then you're fired, all of you. Security will escort you out." "That's fine," I said. "The fee reversion clause is now in effect. You owe us $245,000 per hour starting now." Bradley spoke up quickly. "We'll fight that in court." "While you're fighting who's maintaining your system, I pulled out my phone because I have something else to show you." I connected my phone to the presentation screen. Marcus moved like he wanted to stop me, but Thomas held up his hand. "Let her speak." I opened Phoenix Pay on the screen. This is the system I built independently. On my own time, my own equipment, my own money. I ran a demonstration. The same tests we'd done on NextCore. Phoenix Pay processed transactions 30% faster. The fees were lower. The security was tighter. The interface was cleaner. The investors leaned forward, genuinely interested. Marcus was on his feet. That's company property. We own it. Actually, you claimed ownership, but never proved it, I said. And I've spent the last 3 days establishing it's completely independent. I filed patent applications, copyright registrations, all time-stamped before your lawsuit. Rachel has all the documentation. Rachel nodded. Every line of Phoenix Pay was developed independently. We have proof. Patricia asked the question I'd been waiting for. What is your plan for Phoenix Pay? I took a breath. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward. I'm offering Phoenix Pay directly to you, the investors. Bypass NextCore entirely. My team and I form a new company. You fund us. We'll process payments for 20% lower fees than NextCore charges. Marcus looked like I'd slapped him. They're under NDA, non-compete clauses. Rachel was ready, which became unenforceable when you constructively dismissed them this morning. Your own lawsuit proves you considered the employment relationship terminated. Thomas was already doing math on his phone. What valuation are you seeking, Carol? $5 million for 20% equity. My team and I keep control. Patricia pulled out her phone. I'm interested. Richard, another investor, nodded. So am I. Marcus was apoplectic. This is my company. Thomas looked at him coldly. Marcus, your company is broken. The system you were demonstrating crashed. Your development team is gone. You have massive legal liabilities. And you just spent the last hour proving you're an incompetent manager. NextCore is worthless without these developers. Patricia turned to me. What about NextCore's existing clients? Can Phoenix Pay serve them? Absolutely. Migration would take about 2 weeks per client. Jake was shouting now. This is corporate sabotage. Rachel corrected him calmly. No, Jake. This is free market capitalism. Your father alienated his key employees. Now they're competing. Perfectly legal. Marcus made one last desperate move. He stood up, his voice shaking. Fine, Carol. Name your price. Come back. Lead the company. I'll step aside. The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at me. Marcus continued, his words tumbling out. CEO position. 60% equity. Full control. Just don't destroy what we built. My team gasped. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. It was everything. Everything I could possibly want. The company I'd built. The power. The vindication. The control. I looked at Marcus, at his desperate eyes, at Jake's shocked face, at Derek slumped in his chair. I thought about that morning in the elevator. Fire her department for that Lambo. I thought about the sabotage, the lies, the betrayal, my team crying. And I realized something. I didn't want NextCore. I never had. I'd wanted to build something great. But Marcus had poisoned it. The company was tainted now, built on exploitation and betrayal. I didn't want to save it. I wanted to build something better. No, I said. Marcus blinked. What? No, I don't want NextCore. I don't want to work with you or Derek or Jake ever again. I want my own company, my own terms, my own vision. I turned to the investors. I'm starting fresh. Phoenix Pay will be completely independent. Who's with me? Patricia stood immediately. I'll invest. $2 million for 15%. Thomas was right behind her. $1.5 million for 10%. Richard added, $1 million for 8%. Within 3 minutes, I had offers totaling $5.5 million for 33% of my company. I'd keep control. We'd be funded. We'd be free. Marcus watched his investors abandon him in real time. His face went from red to pale. You can't do this. You have commitments to NextCore. Patricia was already packing her bag. Marcus read the Series B term sheet. It's contingent on successful demonstration of working technology and competent management. You've demonstrated neither. I'm withdrawing my commitment. Thomas nodded. As am I. One by one, every investor pulled out. NextCore's funding disappeared in front of our eyes. Jake looked at his father. Dad, what does this mean? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. It means we're finished. Bradley looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Marcus, we need to dismiss the lawsuit immediately. If Carol countersues now with all these witnesses, we'll lose everything. Personal liability. Everything. Marcus turned to me, his voice hollow. What do you want to make this go away? I want a signed release, stating Phoenix Pay is my sole property, I said. I want all claims dropped, and I want a public apology to my team. In writing, Jake started to protest, but Marcus cut him off. Shut up, Jake. Just shut up. To me, he said. Fine. Bradley, draft it. Bradley was already typing on his laptop, his fingers shaking. But Derek hadn't given up. He'd been silent for the last 10 minutes, staring at his computer screen. Now he looked up and there was something ugly in his expression. Carol, you think you've won, but you haven't. Everyone turned to look at him. While you've been grandstanding, I locked down all the NextCore code, changed all the passwords, encrypted the repositories, and I deleted your access credentials. My stomach dropped. Derek continued, his voice getting stronger. Phoenix Pay is great, but what about NextCore's existing 43 clients? They're using the system right now, today, this minute. They need support, and only I have access to the system. He smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from the investors. You're going to come back to NextCore. Work for us as a junior developer. Standard salary, no equity, or I crash the system and blame you. 43 companies will sue you for damages. Your Phoenix Pay will be dead before it starts. Patricia looked alarmed. Is he serious? Travis was already trying his credentials. I'm locked out. Hannah checked hers. Me too. He really did it. Derek leaned back in his chair, confident again. You have 5 minutes to decide, Carol. Come back to NextCore on our terms or watch it all burn. Marcus was watching with renewed hope in his eyes. Jake was grinning. They thought they'd won. Again. My mind was racing. Derek was right. If the system crashed and NextCore's clients suffered losses, they'd sue everyone involved. Even if I wasn't technically responsible, the legal fees would destroy me. All the progress I'd made in the last hour would evaporate. Emma was close to tears. Carol, what do we do? I didn't have an answer. I felt the trap closing again. Every time I thought I'd escaped, they found a new way to corner me. Then Greg spoke. He'd been quiet all morning. Now he stood up, and there was something amused in his expression. Derek, you're an idiot. Everyone looked at him. Greg walked to the front of the room and opened his own laptop. You locked us out of the front door. But Carol gave us all backdoor access 3 months ago. Administrator-level database access that bypasses your security entirely. I remembered. 3 months ago, worried about Derek's interference, I'd created hidden admin accounts for each team member. Direct database access that didn't go through the normal authentication systems. Greg was already typing. We can restore everything from backup in about 15 minutes. Watch. Derek's face went white. That's not possible. Greg didn't even look up. Yes, it is. Because you're good at office politics, Derek, but you're terrible at actual technology. His fingers flew across the keyboard. The main screen started showing database commands, lines of code restoring access, resetting passwords. Hannah was grinning now. Oh my God. Derek, you're not just stupid. You're criminally stupid. What are you talking about? Derek snapped. Hannah turned her laptop around. When you locked us out and encrypted the repositories, you left a complete audit log, time-stamped, showing deliberate sabotage during an active client demonstration. That's not just breach of contract. That's criminal interference with business operations. Bradley was reading over her shoulder. His face went even paler. Derek, you just committed corporate sabotage, on the record, during a demo with witnesses. Rachel was smiling now. And that's evidence of malicious interference. Carol can sue NextCore for harassment and sabotage. The investors can sue Marcus for gross mismanagement. This gets worse for you with every minute. Marcus turned on Derek, fury replacing hope. What did you do? Derek was stammering. I was trying to save us. You destroyed us, Marcus shouted. Jake tried to defend his father. This is all Carol's fault. Thomas cut him off, his voice icy. No, Jake. This is your father's fault for trying to cheat his employees. Derek's fault for sabotaging his own company. And your fault for being complicit in all of it. Greg looked up from his laptop. Done. Systems restored. All clients are back online. Full functionality. Crisis averted. I could breathe again. We were safe. Patricia handed me her business card. Call me Monday morning. We'll finalize the investment in Phoenix Pay. Thomas did the same. I'm in. This is the best investment opportunity I've seen in 5 years. Richard nodded. Count me in too. The investors started leaving. One by one they walked out, leaving Marcus, Derek, and Jake alone in the ruins of their company. Bradley was packing his laptop. Marcus, I'm withdrawing as counsel. This situation is too ethically compromised for me to continue representing you. He left too. My team gathered around me. Emma was crying, but this time with relief. Did we really just do that? Travis looked stunned. I think we're starting our own company. Hannah was practically bouncing. We just watched them destroy themselves. Greg smiled his quiet smile. Sometimes the best revenge is letting your enemies be themselves. Rachel put her hand on my shoulder. I'll file the incorporation papers today. Congratulations, CEO. We stood there for a moment, the 6 of us in the conference room. The same room where Marcus had tried to fire us an hour ago. The same room where Derek had tried to blackmail us. The same room where everything had fallen apart for NextCore. But for us, everything was just beginning. Marcus was still sitting at the table, his head in his hands. Jake was on his phone, probably calling lawyers. Derek had disappeared, probably to pack his office. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted, but also something else, something like hope. We walked out together, leaving Marcus behind, leaving NextCore behind, leaving all of it behind. The future was uncertain, but it was ours. 2 months later, I stood in a small office space in downtown Austin, Texas. Nothing fancy, just 3,000 square feet on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse. But it was ours. Phoenix Pay had 15 employees now, my original team of 5 plus 10 new hires. Software engineers, a sales director, a customer support specialist, an operations manager. All of them had equity. All of them had a voice. All of them knew they were building something that valued them. We were about to launch publicly. The office was set up for a small event. 20 potential clients had accepted our invitation. The investors were there. Patricia Thomas and Richard, who'd stuck with us through the incorporation process. 3 tech journalists from local and industry publications. Nothing huge, nothing flashy, just honest. I stood at the front of the room wearing a navy blue blazer and feeling more nervous than I'd expected. Emma gave me a thumbs up from her seat. Travis was manning the demo laptop. Hannah and Greg sat together, relaxed and confident. Rachel was in the back there for support. I took a breath and started. Thank you all for coming. 2 months ago, my team and I left our previous company under difficult circumstances. We could have walked away from tech entirely, could have taken easier paths, but we chose to build something new, something better. Phoenix Pay exists for one reason: to treat people fairly. Fair fees for clients, fair treatment for employees, fair business practices, always. The demo went perfectly. Travis ran through the features while I explained the architecture. Phoenix Pay processed 1,000 test transactions in the time NextCore had processed 700. The fees were 25% lower than industry standard. The security was better. The interface was cleaner. Everything we'd promised, we delivered. During the Q&A, a potential client named Susan asked the question I'd been waiting for. What makes Phoenix Pay different from every other payment processor out there? I thought about it for a moment. The technology is better. That's measurable. But the real difference is how we built it and why. We built this system because we believe that companies succeed when they value people. Not just clients, but employees. Not just short-term profits, but long-term relationships. Every person on my team has equity in this company. When we succeed, they succeed. When we make decisions, they have a voice. That's not just good ethics. It's good business. The room was quiet. Then Susan nodded. I'd like to be your first client. By the end of the event, we'd signed 12 new clients. The journalists asked for follow-up interviews. The investors were beaming. My team was exhausted but elated. After everyone left, we sat together in the empty office. Just the 6 of us who'd started this journey. Emma broke the silence. I still can't believe we actually did this. 2 months ago, I thought I was losing my job, that I'd have to move back in with my parents because I couldn't afford rent. Travis laughed a little wild. That moment when Derek locked us out, I genuinely thought we were finished. Hannah shook her head. The entire morning of that demo felt like a nightmare. Every time we solved one problem, a worse one appeared. Greg, always quiet, smiled. Good thing I'm paranoid and set up those database backdoor accounts. We all laughed. The tension that had been coiled inside us for months finally releasing. Rachel raised her water bottle. To paranoia and backup plans. We clinked our bottles together. Over the next 4 months, Phoenix Pay grew faster than any of us expected. We signed 25 clients by month 3, 38 by month 6. The company was valued at $35 million after just 8 weeks of operation. On paper, my team members were all millionaires. But more importantly, they loved coming to work. There was no fear, no betrayal, no toxic management, just people building something together. NextCore didn't fare as well. I heard through industry contacts that Marcus had been forced to sell the company to a private equity firm for a tiny fraction of its previous valuation. He kept a small stake, but lost all control. Derek was fired within a week of the demo disaster. Jake went back to business school. The Lamborghini Aventador was never purchased. The new owners tried to rebuild NextCore with offshore developers. It wasn't going well. 8 of their original 43 clients had already switched to Phoenix Pay. More were considering it. I didn't take pleasure in their failure. Mostly I just felt sad. Marcus had built something real once, but he'd destroyed it through greed and short-sightedness. It didn't have to end that way. One evening, about 6 months after we launched Phoenix Pay, I stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. I sat at my desk and thought about everything that had happened. That conversation in the elevator felt like a lifetime ago. Fire her department for that Lambo, the words that had changed everything. At the time I'd felt betrayed, angry, hurt, and I was all those things. But looking back, I also felt something unexpected, gratitude. Because that betrayal forced me to bet on myself. It pushed me to stop building someone else's dream and start building my own. It showed me who I was when everything was on the line. I opened my journal and started writing, trying to capture the lessons from this experience. The first lesson was obvious. Never build your dream on someone else's foundation. I'd spent 3 years pouring everything into NextCore, making Marcus wealthy, creating value I'd never own. The moment he decided I was disposable, all that work meant nothing. If you're going to sacrifice, sacrifice for yourself. If you're going to build, build something you own. That doesn't mean never work for someone else, but it means protect yourself. Have a backup plan. Create options. The second lesson was about leverage. That contract clause, the $49,000 per hour fee reversion, had seemed like a small thing when I negotiated it 4 years ago, almost an afterthought, but it became my nuclear option. The thing that gave me power when I had none. The lesson: protect yourself before you need protection. Create leverage when you don't need it so it's there when you do. Read every contract carefully. Negotiate every clause. The details matter. They might save you someday. The third lesson was about people. I hadn't won alone. Greg's backdoor database access had saved us. Hannah's forensic skills had documented the sabotage. Travis's technical brilliance had helped build Phoenix Pay. Emma's relationship skills had brought in our first clients. Rachel's legal expertise had guided us through the nightmare. I'd been so focused on my own survival that I'd almost forgotten how much I needed them. The lesson: surround yourself with people you trust. Invest in relationships. Loyalty isn't bought with paychecks. It's earned with respect. When you treat people well, they become your greatest asset. When you betray them, you create enemies who know all your weaknesses. The fourth lesson was about patience and timing. There were so many moments when I'd wanted to give up. When signing Marcus's waiver seemed like the only option. When Derek's lockout felt like checkmate. But I'd waited, trusted the process, let their mistakes compound. Sometimes the best strategy is simply not making things worse while your opponents destroy themselves. Marcus's greed, Derek's sabotage, Jake's arrogance. They defeated themselves more than I defeated them. A few weeks later, I received an email that I'd been staring at for 10 minutes. The sender was Marcus Feldman. Subject line, "Congratulations." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. The email was short. "Carol, you were right. I was wrong. I let greed blind me to what actually mattered. I lost everything chasing a luxury car I never needed. You built something real, something that values people. I hope someday you can forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Marcus." I read it 3 times, trying to decide how I felt. Angry? No, not anymore. The anger had burned itself out. Satisfied? A little. But mostly just sad. I didn't respond, not because I was holding a grudge, but because some chapters need to close. Some relationships can't be repaired. And that's okay. Forgiveness is personal. You can forgive someone without letting them back into your life. You can move on without reconciliation. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. A month after that, I received an unexpected invitation. A tech conference in San Francisco was hosting a panel called Women in Tech Leadership. They wanted me to speak about my journey. I said yes. Standing on that stage in front of 300 people, I told my story. The betrayal, the contract clause, the demo day disaster, the founding of Phoenix Pay, the triumph. I didn't sugarcoat it. I talked about the fear, the moments I'd wanted to quit, the impossible choices. Afterwards, dozens of women approached me. They shared their own stories, being undervalued at work, being betrayed by bosses who'd promised mentorship, being sidelined despite their skills. The details were different, but the pattern was the same. People in power exploiting those who create value. And I realized my story wasn't unique. It wasn't special. It was happening everywhere, constantly, in every industry. That's when I understood the real lesson. This wasn't about one woman's revenge. It was about a systemic problem, and it needed to change. So I started making Phoenix Pay different by design. Every employee got equity from day one. We instituted mandatory profit sharing. No one could be fired without board approval, and the board included employee representatives. I built in the protections I'd wished I had at NextCore. Because when you get power, you have a choice. You can use it to benefit yourself, or you can use it to change the system. You can escape injustice, or you can prevent it for others. I chose prevention. 1 year after leaving NextCore, Phoenix Pay was valued at $90 million. We employed 53 people. We served 76 clients across 12 states. We'd been profitable for 8 months straight. I sat in my office one evening looking at a framed photo of my team from our launch day. Everyone smiling, exhausted, hopeful. We'd come so far. My phone buzzed. It was Emma. Her text said, "Just picked up my daughter from daycare. She asked why Mommy smiles so much now. I told her it's because Mommy works with good people. Thank you for everything." I felt tears in my eyes. That was the real victory. Not the valuation, not the clients, not the money. It was Emma being able to smile when she picked up her daughter. It was Travis planning a vacation for his first wedding anniversary. It was Hannah paying off her student loans. It was Greg taking care of his parents without constant financial stress. It was people being valued. That night, I wrote a message on our company's internal board. I wanted everyone to see it, to remember it. We built this company on a simple truth. People are not disposable. When you value people, they create value. When you treat them fairly, they build something extraordinary. Never forget, every empire built on exploitation eventually crumbles. But companies built on respect, equity, and trust, they endure, they grow, they change the world. That's what we're building here. Not just a payment processing company, but proof that business can be different, that success and integrity aren't opposites, that you can win without destroying others. Remember that, especially when things get hard, especially when shortcuts seem tempting. We're not just building a company, we're building an example. I went home that evening, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My apartment was bigger now. I could afford something nicer, but I'd chosen to stay modest. I still drove the same car, still worked long hours, still believed in the mission more than the money. That evening, I opened my laptop and started sketching ideas for Phoenix Pay version 2.0. New features, better security, faster processing, international expansion possibilities. Because I wasn't done building, I was just getting started. The real lesson I finally understood wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience, about knowing your worth, about refusing to let others define your value, about building your own table when you're excluded from theirs. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I hadn't been broken. I'd been challenged and I'd risen to meet it. And in rising, I'd lifted others with me. That was the victory. Not defeating Marcus or Derek or Jake, but becoming who I was meant to be. A leader who values people, a builder who creates equity, a woman who refused to be disposable and built something undeniable. I closed my laptop and smiled. Tomorrow I'd sign a partnership with a major regional bank. Phoenix Pay would process 10 million transactions monthly. Our team would grow to 75 people by year-end. We'd expand to 6 more states. But tonight, I just sat in grateful silence, knowing that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so good, so successful, so right, that it makes the betrayal irrelevant. I'd built their system. Then I'd used a legal loophole to own my freedom. And in that freedom, I'd built something better. Not just a company, but proof. Proof that integrity wins, that people matter, that justice in the end prevails. Not always quickly, not always easily, but always if you refuse to give up. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between taking the easy path or fighting for what you believed was right? Have you ever felt undervalued at work, like you were just a number on a spreadsheet instead of a person? What? How did you do? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own work situation, or inspired you to stand up for yourself, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refused to be broken by injustice and found their own paths to triumph. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's going through a tough time at work, someone who needs to remember their own worth. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, that your value isn't determined by people who can't see it, that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, that you deserve respect, equity, and fairness in your work. Keep fighting for what's right. Keep believing in yourself. Keep building something better. And never ever let anyone make you feel disposable. You're not. You never were. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Now go show the world what you can build when no one's holding you back. Take care of yourselves, treat others with respect, and remember, the best revenge is building something so good that the betrayal becomes irrelevant. Until next time,